Welcome to the Lightbulb Moment podcast. You are listening to episode 26. Keep calm and carry on when live online goes wrong. In this episode, facilitation issues, are they really worse online, and how to cope in the moment. Joe, in some of our recent training sessions, we've been having a lot of conversations about what to do if things go wrong, which does happen a few times in live online, doesn't it?
It does, but it also happens offline too, in your face-to-face classrooms.
Yes, that is a very good point. But let's focus today on this podcast, the aspect in the title of keeping calm and carrying on, primarily focusing on the facilitation side and making your webinar or virtual classroom run smoothly.
Well, I think a place to start is that people need to realise things go wrong, and they go wrong all the time. They can be big issues, small issues, and they have a variety of different impacts on the session.
Yeah, and I think, we've probably just scared a few people here because things will go wrong.
It is inevitable. So no, don't go, please stay.
But you're only being honest, aren't you, really? Let's face it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still have issues on sessions that we run all the time.
Yeah, and I guess that's the point of this podcast today. It's thinking about those issues, whether they're technical issues, big or small.
Yeah, there are technical issues, there are design issues, there are delivery issues, and it's all about how we tackle them and what we know about them. And a lot of people have in their head, oh my God, some big, scary issue. Nobody can connect to the room, the sound doesn't work, and all of those kind of things. And they are big issues, they are technical issues, and we do have to kind of work around them and learn about those. But also there are design and delivery issues which can be quite small issues. So maybe a presentation hasn't quite formatted properly, or it's uploaded and converted incorrectly if you're using Adobe Connect or WebEx. And if you discover that late in the session, then obviously that's a small challenge. But also it could be a bigger issue. But it's about how you facilitate that issue.
And that's exactly what I want to talk about today. It's when these, whether they're big or small issues, as you say, when they come up, how do we actually resolve them or turn them into a smaller issue?
And you're coming to me for advice on this.
Stupidly I did. But joking aside, I've seen you under extreme pressure with especially some bigger technical issues.
Yeah.
And as far as the attendees are aware, everything seems to be okay, you're still delivering. It's something that makes the difference from, say, a new virtual facilitator to an experienced and confident facilitator.
Yeah, you're just saying that I'm able to pull the wool over people's eyes.
It's like Houdini of, oh, no, that wasn't a problem. It was designed that way.
Don't look behind the curtain. But you're right, it's about managing yourself and in the moment. And I think that's something we should dig into.
Yeah, definitely. Let's jump straight into that. And I also just want to say that we've got in podcast episode 4, which is titled From Failure to Success, and episode 6, Tech Issues, we cover a lot of the nitty-gritty of what to do if X happens, such as a technical problem. So today, let's go over the facilitation issues and how to sort of handle them calmly so that they don't really impact the attendee.
Okay, so we're talking here about those smaller issues that more than likely will happen in your sessions, and maybe all of them will happen.
Yeah, exactly. So this could, the poll doesn't load or the slide is wrong, things like this. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and we've mentioned it a few times, and I'm going to reiterate it again for about the 100th time. Things will go wrong. But things go wrong in life. It's about how we deal with them. And when we're working live online, everyone has the potential bandwidth issues, hardware issues, technical issues. There's the software platform that we're doing this in, so Adobe Connect, WebEx, Skype for Business, whatever it is, they can all have their off days, their server issues, whatever it is.
Okay, we're back to scaring the listener.
But no, it's about being realistic and going in with the attitude and the understanding and the mindset that things won't always go right. Just like in a face-to-face classroom, the projector doesn't always work, the screen doesn't always pull down, the speakers aren't always plugged in, whatever it is, there are always going to be those issues. You've forgotten your notebook or the handouts that you wanted to give people, or they're still in the car. There's always going to be challenges. We've just got these specific ones live online.
Yeah, sure. And I guess it also comes down to, exactly what it is you're trying to do as well, whether it's a webinar, virtual classroom, or how many attendees, isn't it?
Yeah, that can feel like it adds pressure. If you've got 8 people on session 4, you've probably built up the rapport where you can have a bit of a laugh and go, oh no, stuff's going wrong. Hang on in there with me, guys. If you're doing this publicly with 100 people on a webinar, that's much more stressful. And I've been in those situations. And I remember somebody saying to me, we had webcams on behind the screen, behind the scenes, and somebody saying to me, your face was a picture. So, but externally, it was all about, don't worry, guys, just looking into this, going to find this out. I'll be right back with you. So it's that flexibility and that outward confidence.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems, where we've chatted with attendees in our virtual classroom training course, often people seem to think that things going wrong online, it's just the end of the world, that just, the world is going to swallow you whole and spit you out, that it's the end.
Hey, you're scaring people, Mike.
Yeah, maybe we should have done this as like a Halloween podcast or so. But there seems to be, maybe this is strong terminology, but I like to use strong language it's maybe an irrational fear or a fear of the unknown. And I always feel like we never really get to the actual point where somebody goes, it is because of this. I mean, why do you think people are more worried about online things going wrong?
I think the technology is a big layer of that. And people often see that as a huge barrier, whereas when it works, it's the enabler that brings everybody together and we can do all these amazing things. And also, it might not help that my facilitator guide, for instance, works down to the 30 seconds. And what happens if we spend 30 seconds fixing something that's wrong, we're off time then. But this is more about flexibility. And every single trainer has had things go, either small things go wrong or disastrous things go wrong in their face-to-face sessions. And they've coped with it. And they've learnt strategies and they design better and deliver better and they work with it in the moment. So all our job is saying, let's take all of those skills that you have, layer on top some live online ones about technology, about not seeing your attendees and giving people confidence with that.
Yeah, I think absolutely great points, especially with sort of building confidence. And I guess it's where you focus as a facilitator. Is that right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it goes back to that sort of Wizard of Oz reference from before, like don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Because if we have a slide that doesn't load properly or whatever, and we're going, oh, the slide hasn't loaded properly, or, oh, I never finished my poll with the questions in, then that's the bit that people are going to focus on. We're spotlighting it really, aren't we?
Yeah, and actually I think that is another great point about being in the spotlight or where the spotlight is. And I think that's a great piece of advice for the sort of facilitators and potential facilitators out there. And that's the fact that you can control that spotlight.
Yeah.
If the slide isn't working properly and you keep saying, oh, the slide isn't working properly, that's where people are going to focus. So if you actually sort of change where that spotlight is, move on, try doing something different, they're going to be focusing on what you want them to focus on. And that makes me think also, this is something that I've said quite a few times in our recent training courses, and that is the fact that attendees can only see and hear what is on the screen. They can't see or hear what you should have done or what you wanted to do or what you plan to do. They can only see the end result. And that end result, they might think is great,
Exactly. So you can shine that spotlight on something that's gone wrong, or you can shine it somewhere else. So, you've loaded up a poll and you realise there's something wrong on it, you didn't finish it, there's a spelling mistake, not all the options are there, whatever. You can facilitate that maybe quite quickly and then, let's say, bring up a whiteboard and say, now let's think about blah, blah, blah topic on the whiteboard. They don't know that you're basically covering because it went wrong or whatever.
And that actually perfectly demonstrates both the points of what I've just made there. One, you move that spotlight from the poll to a whiteboard or, to the chat window, whatever it is you wanted to do. And then you facilitated that conversation away from the poll, but still got the learning point or the information you needed across. The attendees likely thought, the whiteboard was just an extra planned bit of the activity and are none the wiser there was an issue. And this is what makes the difference between a stuttering, not very professional webinar or virtual classroom and what can now seem like a smooth, professional offering.
Absolutely. And we see this a lot. And to be fair, I still do this too.
Don't say that.
I'm not holding myself up as being perfect. And it happens. So, there's a lot of difference between, my poll's missing some questions. Oh, there should be some more questions on it. Oh, well, we'll not bother with it. Let's move on to the next slide. That sounds really unprofessional. Yeah.
And also I was just thinking that immediately I just wanted to jump in as an attendee and be like, so am I missing learning now?
What am I missing out on? What have you mucked up and affecting how I do my job?
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this is the point. We all find it hard to control that panic. Even doing this podcast, all of a sudden I go wrong and it's like, what are we doing? And we could actually edit and sort that out. But when you're live, it's hard to control.
Yeah. And, we still do this, all of us, and we try to get away with it. So sometimes, especially because we're doing kind of train the trainer, I joke that I've done that on purpose of an example of what not to do.
That never works. I would say that never works.
Ever works. Sometimes it's you have to own the issue and move on quickly. And sometimes that can be hard because in our heart of hearts, we know it went wrong and we want it to be better.
But I guess this also goes back to sort of both the points of the keeping calm and carrying on, but also the attendees can't see how it should have been. We were in one of our training courses, we actually get some of the facilitators to do some practical delivery so then we can give feedback and help them. And one of the people did absolutely great. We were there, Joe and myself were typing in the background going, wow, they're so on this. They've done absolutely nearly 99% of everything great. To the point where we were like, do we actually need to train this person? They could do our job. And then they came back. And when we always get them to give their own feedback as well from their perspective. And they said, oh, this went wrong. And the only feedback we had from them was they kept highlighting what had gone wrong.
Yeah.
And it detracted from what they did great.
Yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes you need to be honest and say there's an issue and take control of the situation. But remaining calm and sounding confident is key. And I always say to people kind of like, we've got loads of time, don't worry, we'll sort this out. Even if I'm thinking, oh my God, we've got no time, how are we going to sort it out? It's what you project.
Yeah, and I like the fact you always say that we can't truly multitask, but we can task switch.
Yeah, so if we're trying to fix a problem and delivering, we just can't do both. And people know that the times I'm trying to type in the chat window and still talk through the learning point, it just doesn't work. I come to a grinding halt and it doesn't look professional and eventually it actually takes up more time.
Yes, I've been there on sessions when you've literally just said, right, everyone, I'm helping Bob with a technical issue. In the chat window, discuss the topic we've just been talking about whilst I resolve the issue, haven't you?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because I have to focus where I need to and give people something to do at the same time.
Yeah, and by owning it, especially if you're helping an attendee with a technical issue, the other attendees often feel better. They actually sit there and go, right, well, if I have a problem, Joe is going to jump in and help me. So they feel a lot better about themselves as well, don't they?
Yeah, hopefully. And also a producer or co-host or co-facilitator can then be invaluable. And they can help resolve issues in the background whilst I then focus on delivery, or vice versa. I've done that sometimes to you. And we've talked about this before where I say, hey, Mike, can you just talk about X whilst I go and do whatever it is that I need to do to fix a problem, maybe with my microphone or do a reboot, whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's that dreaded moment as a producer when all of a sudden Joe's microphone just cuts out or you see her log off or she goes, right, Mike, you take over this next section, and all of a sudden you're like,
Yeah, we need to refer people back to that Facilitator Guide episode, which is what saves you every time.
And again, it comes back to that breathe. You've got time online to go, right, okay, let's give us some time here. Let's look at the facilitator guide and then see what we want to do.
Yeah, and people often think that pauses online are bad. And, pauses where I go silent in the middle of a sentence are bad. But pauses where I say, hey, everybody, in the chat window, type this and be quiet. And if you do something like that, and then you are looking at the facilitator guide going, oh my God, what's next? People don't know that. Once again, people can't see behind that curtain.
Yeah, and I think I've used this when I've been thrown into situations like this, and I feel like I've seen you do this as well, where all of a sudden you will sit there and go, okay, everyone, just give me a raised hand, have a think if you've got any questions about what we've covered so far. And then you give people that bit of time where they're actually sitting there going, oh, do I have any questions? And then it gives you that time to have a look at the facilitator guide or to type to me or whatever it is. So you've artificially created yourself some time there, to some processing time.
And there are great little things, little tricks that you can do, such as, let's just have a quick 1-minute summary of where we're up to right now. Or what's the one thing you would apply at work from what we've discovered and discussed so far? And they're little handy things just to pull out of the hat to give you that bit of breathing space to go and concentrate on something. And also, I think it's okay to say, let me just catch up on where Joe was. Give me 1 second, and you pause, and people are just like, hey, that's cool, because you're just jumping in or whatever. And as long as you're acknowledging it without panicking, people will be okay with that.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that a lot of people, for whatever reason, tend to think that online training course or live online session, whatever it is, has to be the most professional thing, that nothing can go wrong or whatever it is. Yet things do go wrong, and actually attendees, quite often, they've been on webinars where it's taken the host 10 minutes before it even starts, and they're probably expecting something to go wrong.
Yeah, and it's all about how you handle it. And if it's gone wrong because the facilitator is unprepared, they haven't learnt the technology, they haven't turned up early and done what they needed to do, then they're going to get annoyed. But if you're kind of doing something and in the moment something happens and you go, sorry about this, guys, I did check this beforehand, it was working, let me just resolve the issue that's come up now. And also you're calm and maybe you make light of it somehow without being negative, people are with you and people want you to succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really great advice as well. And hopefully to our listeners out there, they might sit there and think, okay, I can calm down a bit when I go into some of these sessions, especially if you don't deliver that often or you haven't started delivering yet. For often just owning the fact of going, right, there's an issue here, let's move on. Or if you get a bit more confidence, using some of our tactics of giving yourself that bit of time. Okay, so that has been a great conversation. We could do a load more on things that we've messed up and how.
So many things.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about our next podcast. And I think, did we decide we should do a look at being a producer, because I'm a producer.
We should. And it's all about you, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've got to get the limelight. I've got to get the spotlight off of you. I've got to bring that spotlight to me, where I want the spotlight to be.
For one episode, we will let you do that, Mike.
So I look forward to our next podcast, because it's going to be about me.
Thank you for listening. We really hope you enjoyed it and look forward to your feedback and your comments. If you like the podcast, please remember to subscribe and to share. You can follow Mike on Twitter @MikeLightBulb. You can follow me on Twitter @LightBulbJoe, and for other updates @MomentLightBulb. You can also find our podcasts on YouTube, along with more great content. If you're in need of virtual classroom training, check out lightbulbmoment.online. For our blogs, lightbulbmoment.info. And remember our free community for questions and resources, lightbulbmoment.community.